In the silence before dawn, when the world holds its breath between darkness and light, there exists a moment of perfect stillness. Yet within this stillness, the Hermetic adept perceives something extraordinary, an infinite spectrum of vibration, rising like an invisible ladder from the densest matter to the purest spirit. Each rung represents not merely a different state of being, but a different frequency of existence itself. What if every state of consciousness we experience, from the heaviest despair to the lightest joy, from base instinct to divine inspiration, is simply a note on the same cosmic scale? What if the journey from matter to spirit is not a leap across an unbridgeable chasm, but a gradual ascent up, frequencies we can learn to perceive and navigate? The ancient Hermetic texts speak of reality as a continuum of vibration, where nothing rests and everything moves in eternal oscillation. But this is not the abstract vibration of modern physics, not the measurable wave-particle duality studied in laboratories, but something far more intimate and immediate. Unlike the electromagnetic frequencies that science measures with instruments, this is the felt experience of consciousness itself, the spiritual and psychological vibration that we live from moment to moment, the quality of awareness that determines whether we experience life as heavy or light, contracted or expansive, trapped or free. This Hermetic understanding of vibration belongs to the realm of lived experience rather than mathematical equation. It describes the texture of consciousness as it moves from dense, reactive states to refined, responsive awareness. When we speak of matter vibrating slowly and spirit vibrating rapidly, we are not making claims about measurable frequencies, but mapping the felt quality of different states of being. The person trapped in depression experiences the slow, heavy vibration of consciousness contracted around pain. The person touched by inspiration experiences the rapid, light vibration of awareness expanded into possibility. These are not metaphors for physical processes, but descriptions of the actual lived texture of consciousness as it manifests across the spectrum from density to subtlety. We stand at the base of this ladder every morning when we wake, and we begin our ascent with every thought that rises above mere survival, every emotion that transcends raw impulse, every moment when we choose awareness over automaticity. Today, we explore this ladder of frequencies as both cosmology and psychology, as both ancient wisdom and immediate reality. For in understanding the spectrum of vibration that runs from matter to spirit, we discover not only the architecture of existence, but the very path of human transformation. At the foundation of the Hermetic worldview lies a profound recognition. Matter is not separate from spirit, but spirit at its densest, slowest frequency. Like light passing through increasingly thick glass until it appears almost solid, consciousness itself condenses into what we experience as physical reality. The lowest rungs of our vibratory ladder are not evil or fallen. They are simply spirit moving at its most contracted, compressed rate. In the Hermetic understanding, matter vibrates at frequencies so slow they appear to us as stillness. A stone seems motionless, yet the initiated eye perceives it as consciousness in its most condensed form, vibrating at rates that create the illusion of solidity and permanence. This is not mere metaphor, but fundamental reality. What we call matter is simply awareness, vibrating slowly enough to create stable, persistent forms. Consider how this plays out in the realm of lived experience. When consciousness operates at its densest frequencies, thoughts become solid, repetitive, seemingly unchangeable. The person trapped in obsessive thinking experiences ideas as heavy, persistent things that resist transformation. Their mental landscape feels as solid and immutable as stone. This is consciousness vibrating at such slow rates that it appears fixed. Though from a higher perspective, we can see that even the most rigid thought pattern is simply energy in motion, capable of being refined into more fluid, creative expression. The Hermetic insight here is profound. Density is not the enemy of refinement, but its foundation. The stone does not oppose the flower that grows from the soil around it. It provides the mineral foundation that makes growth possible. Similarly, the dense frequencies of consciousness provide the stability and grounding that make higher flights of awareness sustainable. The mystic who cannot function in practical reality has failed to properly integrate the gifts of the lower frequencies. True mastery involves not transcending density, but including it in an increasingly comprehensive harmony. But the ladder of frequencies extends beyond physical matter into the psychological realm. The lowest vibrations of human consciousness mirror the density of stone and earth. These are the states dominated by pure survival instinct, by fear and aggression, by the compulsive need to acquire, dominate, and protect. Like matter itself, these psychological frequencies create a sense of heaviness, of being trapped in patterns that seem immutable. The person caught in the grip of base fear operates at the lowest rungs of the psychological spectrum. Their consciousness has condensed into reactive patterns, so dense they feel like prison walls. Anger, hatred, compulsive desire, these are not moral failings, but vibratory states, frequencies of awareness that create their own gravitational pull, making it difficult to rise to higher levels of perception. But here, we must be careful not to judge these lower frequencies as inherently negative or spiritually inferior. In the natural world, every frequency serves a purpose. The slow, heavy vibrations of matter create the stable platform from which more delicate phenomena can emerge. Similarly, the dense frequencies of human emotion and instinct serve essential functions. Fear protects us from genuine danger. Anger mobilizes energy for necessary action. Even hatred, properly understood, is often love protecting itself from perceived threat. The problem arises not from experiencing these frequencies, but from becoming trapped within them, unable to modulate to higher rates when circumstances call for different responses. The person stuck in chronic anxiety is not experiencing the natural protective function of fear, but fear vibrating at such a contracted rate that it becomes self-perpetuating. The individual consumed by rage is not accessing anger's clean energy for appropriate action, but anger condensed into a toxic density that poisons rather than empowers. Yet here lies the first profound insight of Hermetic psychology. These dense frequencies are not obstacles to transcendence, but its very foundation. Just as physical matter provides the stable platform from which we can reach toward the sky, our most basic instincts and emotions provide the energetic foundation for higher consciousness. The fear that once enslaved can become the raw power that fuels ascension. The anger that once destroyed can become the fierce energy of transformation. The desire that once compelled can become the passionate dedication to what truly serves life. But here, the Hermetic journey takes a decisive turn. Recognition of our current frequency is not enough. We must learn to consciously raise our vibrational rate, to climb from the density of reactive consciousness toward the clarity of aware response. The ascent begins not with a rejection of lower frequencies, but with their conscious transformation. In Hermetic tradition, this is the great work of alchemy, not the literal transmutation of lead into gold, but the vibrational elevation of consciousness from its densest to its most refined states. Each rung of the ladder represents a more subtle, more rapid frequency of awareness. From the foundational vibrations of matter and instinct, consciousness begins to quicken into the realm of emotion. But emotion, in the Hermetic sense, is not the chaotic storm we often experience. It is energy in motion, frequency made fluid. The difference between destructive emotion and transformative feeling lies not in the intensity, but in the vibrational rate. Fear can vibrate so slowly it becomes paralysis, or so quickly it becomes excitement. Anger can condense into bitter resentment or refine itself into passionate dedication to justice. The emotional spectrum reveals itself as an entire octave of possibilities between the dense frequencies of instinct and the refined frequencies of thought. At the lower end, we find emotions that feel heavy, sticky, persistent, grief that becomes depression, love that becomes possessiveness, joy that becomes manic compulsion. These are emotional frequencies that have condensed, slowed down, become trapped in repetitive patterns that resist change. But as emotion refines its vibrational rate, it becomes increasingly fluid, responsive, and creative. Grief can quicken into the poignant beauty of remembrance. Love can refine itself into the spacious appreciation that seeks the beloved's highest good rather than personal satisfaction. Joy can become the effervescent lightness that bubbles up spontaneously from contact with life's inherent creativity. The mystics of every tradition have recognized this spectrum of emotional frequency. The Sufi poets speak of transforming the fire of longing from base desire into divine love, not by eliminating desire, but by refining its vibrational rate until it becomes transparent to higher influences. The Christian contemplatives describe the purification of passion into compassion, not the destruction of feeling, but its elevation to frequencies that serve universal rather than merely personal ends. The Buddhist teachings on the transformation of the afflictive emotions into their wisdom aspects point to this same process of vibrational refinement. In each case, the raw energy remains the same. What changes is the vibrational rate at which it operates. This is a crucial point often misunderstood in spiritual practice. The goal is not to eliminate emotion, but to become conscious of its vibrational possibilities. to learn to work with emotional energy as a musician works with sound, capable of playing the full range from dense bass notes to crystalline high frequencies, each appropriate to different moments and purposes. As we climb higher on the ladder, consciousness enters the realm of thought and imagination. Here, vibration becomes even more subtle, more responsive to conscious direction. Thought operates at frequencies far more rapid than emotion, capable of instantaneous transformation and infinite creative recombination. But thought, too, exists on a spectrum from dense to refined. At its lowest frequencies, thinking becomes compulsive and repetitive, trapped in circular patterns that generate more heat than light. These are the mental vibrations that create anxiety, obsession, and the endless internal dialogue that drowns out deeper wisdom. The person caught in mental loops experiences thought as heavy, persistent, unchangeable, ideas that feel as solid and immutable as matter itself. This is thinking at such slow, vibrational rates that it begins to mimic the density of the material realm. But as thought refines its frequency, it becomes increasingly transparent to higher influences. At the middle ranges of mental vibration, thinking becomes flexible, creative, responsive to new information and changing circumstances. Ideas flow more freely, connecting in novel patterns that generate insight and understanding. This is the realm of healthy intellectual activity, where thought serves as a useful tool for navigating complexity rather than a prison of repetitive patterns. At the highest frequencies of mental operation, thought becomes so refined that it begins to dissolve into direct knowing. Ideas arise not from personal will or logical deduction, but from deeper sources of intelligence that seem to operate beyond individual consciousness. Imagination becomes not escapism, but perception of possibilities invisible to denser levels of awareness. This is the realm that the ancient Greeks called nous. Not just thinking about things, but direct participatory awareness of truth itself. The Neoplatonic tradition mapped this ascent with extraordinary precision. Plotinus described the movement from the material realm through the psychic realm toward the noetic realm, from matter through soul to mind. Each level represents not a different location, but a different frequency of the same underlying reality. We do not travel to higher worlds. We learn to vibrate in sympathy with higher frequencies that were always present but previously imperceptible. This understanding transforms our relationship to thought itself. Instead of being identified with every mental content that arises, we begin to recognize thinking as a vibrational phenomenon that we can consciously modulate. Like learning to play a musical instrument, we develop the capacity to choose which frequencies of thought we engage and which we allow to pass through awareness without attachment or identification. What does it mean to rise without leaving the ground? This is the central paradox of Hermetic ascension. We do not abandon the lower rungs of the ladder, but include them in an increasingly comprehensive vibration. The person who has learned to operate at higher frequencies does not lose access to emotion or even instinct. Rather, they can consciously modulate their vibrational rate to meet the needs of each moment. The master musician does not abandon the lower notes of the scale, but learns to play the full range with conscious artistry. Similarly, the Hermetic adept learns to consciously attune to whatever frequency serves the highest good in each situation. Sometimes the need is for the grounded stability of material consciousness. Sometimes it calls for the flowing responsiveness of emotional awareness. Sometimes it requires the swift precision of rational thought. And sometimes it demands the luminous clarity of spiritual perception. Modern psychology has rediscovered what the Hermetic tradition always knew. Consciousness operates on a spectrum of frequencies, from the most contracted and reactive to the most expanded and responsive. What contemporary research calls states of consciousness are precisely these different vibrational rates of awareness, each characterized by its own speed of processing, range of perception, and quality of response. At the lowest frequencies of psychological functioning, we find what psychiatry calls the reptilian brain responses: fight, flight, freeze, or collapse. These are not pathological states, but necessary foundational frequencies that ensure survival in threatening situations. Like the dense vibrations of matter, they provide stability and quick response in crisis. But when consciousness becomes trapped at these frequencies, unable to modulate to higher rates, we experience what psychology terms trauma, anxiety disorders, or chronic stress. The therapeutic process, viewed through Hermetic eyes, is essentially vibrational healing, helping consciousness learn to climb from trapped, repetitive frequencies toward more fluid, responsive rates of vibration. Cognitive behavioral therapy works by teaching the mind to consciously shift from automatic thought patterns to more flexible mental frequencies. Somatic therapies help the body release stored trauma by allowing frozen emotional energies to begin vibrating again at their natural rates. But psychology at its most profound goes beyond mere healing to what Abraham Maslow called self-actualization, and what transpersonal psychology terms self-transcendence. These represent the higher rungs of the psychological spectrum, frequencies of consciousness characterized by increasing integration, creativity, and what researchers call flow states. In flow, consciousness operates at a frequency that perfectly matches the demands of the moment. There is no lag between perception and response, no friction between intention and action. The athlete in flow, the artist in creative transport, the scientist in the grip of discovery, all have accessed vibrational states that transcend ordinary psychological functioning. Neuroscience now maps these different frequencies with increasing precision. The slow delta waves of deep sleep correspond to the foundational frequencies necessary for restoration and regeneration. The rapid gamma waves associated with heightened awareness and mystical experience represent some of the highest frequencies accessible to human consciousness. Between these extremes lies the full spectrum of human psychological possibility. But here, psychology and Hermeticism part company in a crucial way. Psychology tends to view these different states as temporary departures from normal consciousness, interesting but ultimately secondary to baseline functioning. Hermeticism recognizes them as rungs on a ladder that consciousness can learn to climb permanently, not as altered states, but as higher stages of development. This is not myth alone. it is initiation. The transformation of consciousness from lower to higher frequencies is not a theoretical possibility, but a practical discipline practiced by countless individuals across cultures and centuries. The techniques vary: meditation, contemplation, breathwork, sacred movement, alchemical visualization. But the principle remains constant. Consciousness can be trained to operate at increasingly subtle and powerful frequencies. The person who has learned to consciously modulate their vibrational rate possesses what the Hermetic texts call the keys to the kingdom. They can access the stability and power of lower frequencies when needed, while maintaining the clarity and responsiveness of higher states as their natural baseline. They have learned to play the full instrument of consciousness rather than being trapped in a few repetitive notes. At the apex of the vibratory ladder lies what the Hermetic tradition calls nous, not just mind, but mind itself, consciousness vibrating at such a refined rate that it transcends all the limitations that characterize lower frequencies. Here, vibration becomes so pure, so rapid, that it appears to dissolve into perfect stillness. Like a wheel spinning so fast it seems motionless, spirit represents motion so complete it manifests as absolute rest. The paradox is intentional and profound. Spirit is not the opposite of matter, but matter freed from all constraint, vibrating at infinite frequency. It is not the negation of energy, but energy so perfectly organized that it transcends all the friction and resistance that characterize lower vibrational states. In touching spirit, consciousness does not escape the spectrum of vibration, but reaches its ultimate octave. The mystical traditions of every culture have attempted to describe this highest frequency, though language always proves inadequate to the task. The Sufis speak of fana, the dissolution of individual consciousness into divine awareness. The Hindu tradition describes samadhi, absorption so complete that knower, knowing, and known become one vibration. The Christian mystics write of unio mystica, union with God that transcends all duality while somehow preserving the capacity for relationship and love. In each case, the accounts point toward a frequency of consciousness so refined that normal categories of thought and perception no longer apply. Yet this is not unconsciousness, but superconsciousness, not the absence of vibration, but its perfect fulfillment. The adept who touches these frequencies reports not emptiness, but infinite fullness, not silence, but the source from which all sound emerges. The Hermetic texts describe this state with characteristic precision. As above, so below. As below, so above. At the highest frequency, consciousness recognizes itself as the source and substance of all lower frequencies. The spirit that seemed so distant from matter reveals itself as matter's innermost essence. The divine that appeared to transcend the human discloses itself as the human's deepest identity. But here, we encounter the most challenging aspect of the entire teaching. These highest frequencies are not achieved through escape from the world, but through complete engagement with it. The ladder of vibration is not a means of leaving behind the lower rungs, but of including them in an ever more comprehensive harmony. The enlightened consciousness does not abandon matter, emotion, thought, and imagination, but orchestrates them all from the perspective of spirit. This is why the Hermetic tradition speaks not of transcendence, but of transformation, not of escape, but of alchemy. The goal is not to reach a frequency so pure that it no longer relates to ordinary existence, but to achieve such mastery of the vibrational spectrum that every moment of life becomes an expression of spirit working through matter, of infinite consciousness manifesting through finite form. At the top of the ladder, vibration dissolves into silence. But this silence is not empty. It is pregnant with infinite possibility, the pause between notes that makes music possible, the emptiness between words that allows meaning to emerge. From this silence, the adept learns to speak all the frequencies of existence with conscious artistry. The person who has reached these heights does not remain there in blissful isolation, but becomes a conscious bridge between spirit and matter, capable of translating the insights of the highest frequencies into forms accessible to consciousness operating at lower vibrational rates. They become what the tradition calls a Hermes, a messenger between worlds, a living demonstration that the ladder of frequencies is not merely a cosmological theory, but a practical possibility open to human realization. The ladder of frequencies is not an abstract metaphysical doctrine, but a lived reality accessible in every moment of ordinary existence. Each thought we think, each emotion we feel, each choice we make represents a movement up or down this vibrational spectrum. The question is not whether we are climbing the ladder, but whether we are climbing it consciously. In the morning, as consciousness emerges from the slow frequencies of sleep, we face the first choice of the day. Will we remain trapped in the density of unconscious reaction, or will we consciously attune to higher vibrational possibilities? The simple act of pausing before responding to the day's first challenge is already a movement up the ladder, a shift from automatic reaction to conscious response. Throughout the day, countless opportunities arise to practice vibrational discernment. When anger arises, we can allow it to condense into resentment and blame, or we can recognize it as energy that can be transformed into clarity and appropriate action. When fear appears, we can let it trap us in paralysis, or we can feel its raw power and direct it toward necessary change. When desire emerges, we can be enslaved by its compulsive quality, or we can appreciate its information about what we value and choose how to respond. This is not about suppressing or denying any frequency of experience, but about developing the capacity to work consciously with whatever energies arise. The Hermetic practitioner learns to become a skilled musician of consciousness, capable of playing whatever notes serve the highest good in each situation, while maintaining awareness of the full spectrum of possibility. The practice requires what the tradition calls vibrational hygiene, conscious attention to the frequencies we absorb from our environment and the frequencies we broadcast into the world. The media we consume, the conversations we participate in, the thoughts we entertain, all influence our vibrational state. Like a tuning fork that begins to vibrate in sympathy with nearby sound, consciousness naturally attunes to the frequencies that surround it. But the mature practitioner learns to become a source of higher frequency rather than merely a recipient of environmental influence. Through consistent practice of meditation, contemplation, conscious breathing, and mindful attention, they develop the capacity to maintain higher vibrational states, even in challenging circumstances. They become what systems theorists call attractors, individuals whose presence naturally elevates the vibrational quality of any situation they enter. This transformative influence operates not through preaching or teaching, but through the simple presence of consciousness operating at refined frequencies. Just as a single candle can illuminate an entire dark room without effort or strain, a person established in higher vibrational awareness naturally creates conditions that make it easier for others to access their own higher possibilities. The daily practice of conscious vibration becomes a form of service, not only to one's own development, but to the collective evolution of human consciousness. Every moment we choose response over reaction, every time we transform dense emotion into refined energy, every instant we operate from wisdom rather than conditioning contributes to the overall vibrational quality of the human field. What must the soul release to ascend? This question haunts every serious practitioner. The answer is both simple and challenging. We must release the illusion that we are trapped at any particular frequency. The soul is naturally capable of accessing the full spectrum of vibration from matter to spirit. What keeps us confined to narrow ranges is habit, fear, and the mistaken belief that our current state defines our permanent identity. The liberation comes not through acquiring something new, but through remembering our natural vibrational flexibility. Like a musician who has been playing only a few notes, rediscovering they have access to the full keyboard, consciousness can learn to recognize and utilize its complete range of possibility. As we reach the culmination of our exploration, we discover that the ladder of frequencies reveals itself to be something even more profound than a map of consciousness. It is the very structure of existence itself, from the densest matter to the subtlest spirit, from the slowest vibration to the most rapid oscillation. Reality unfolds as one continuous spectrum of being expressing itself at different rates and intensities. The Hermetic vision sees no fundamental separation between any level of this spectrum. The same consciousness that vibrates slowly enough to appear as stone vibrates rapidly enough to manifest as pure spirit. The same energy that condenses into solid matter refines itself into luminous awareness. The same intelligence that operates as instinct in the lower frequencies operates as wisdom in the higher octaves. This recognition transforms our relationship to every aspect of existence. Matter is no longer dead substance to be transcended, but spirit in its most concentrated form, deserving of reverence and conscious engagement. Emotion is no longer chaotic disturbance to be suppressed, but energy seeking its proper frequency and expression. Thought is no longer mere mental activity, but consciousness, exploring its creative possibilities. And spirit is no longer distant goal to be achieved, but the ever-present source and essence of all other frequencies. Living this understanding means recognizing that we are never separate from any level of the spectrum. We are matter when we need grounding and stability. We are emotion when we need responsiveness and flow. We are mind when we need clarity and discrimination. We are spirit when we need wisdom and transcendence. The art lies not in choosing one frequency over others, but in learning to orchestrate all frequencies in conscious harmony. The person who has integrated this teaching becomes what the Hermetic tradition calls a complete human being, one who can consciously access and express the full range of vibrational possibility. They are neither purely spiritual nor purely material, but fully human, capable of dancing across the entire spectrum of existence with grace and purpose. This integration does not happen once and remain fixed. It is a dynamic process that deepens throughout life as we encounter new situations that call forth different aspects of our vibrational repertoire. Each challenge becomes an opportunity to expand our range, each relationship a chance to practice conscious frequency modulation, each moment of life a note in the grand symphony of being. The ultimate teaching of the ladder of frequencies is not that we should abandon lower vibrations for higher ones, but that we should learn to include all frequencies in an ever-expanding harmony. The master alchemist does not destroy lead, but transforms it into gold while preserving its essential nature. Similarly, the conscious being does not eliminate matter, emotion, or thought, but transforms them into expressions of spirit while maintaining their unique qualities and functions. We climb the vibratory ladder not by fleeing matter, but by transforming it into light. This is the final paradox and the deepest truth. The highest spiritual attainment is not escape from the world, but complete presence to it. Not transcendence of form, but the recognition of spirit expressing itself through every form. Not the achievement of some rarefied state, but the discovery that every state, from the densest matter to the purest spirit, is already a perfect manifestation of the one consciousness that vibrates at every frequency and dances at every level of the cosmic scale. In recognizing this, we find ourselves not at the end of a journey, but at the beginning of a new way of being, conscious participants in the eternal vibration that is reality itself, capable of playing our part in the cosmic symphony with both humility and mastery, both individual expression and universal harmony. The ladder of frequencies becomes not something we climb once, but something we dance upon daily. Not a distant teaching, but a living reality we embody with every breath, every thought, every moment of conscious engagement with the magnificent spectrum of existence.